Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another video. And again, I just would like to share with you this is my perspective on conflict management. Now, let me give you a quick background on myself. My name is Dr. Chris Lowe, and I have been working for roughly 32 years of my life. For the past 26 years of my life, I've been a chief executive officer for a robotics and software company. I spent 6 years with this organization as its chief executive officer, and then I was promoted to the chief executive officer for its healthcare division, and I spent roughly about 20 years as the chief executive officer for the healthcare division. Now, with the tech company, we had roughly about 2,000 employees working for us. And with the healthcare division, we had about 25,000 employees working for us. I was also the chief executive officer for the parent company, and altogether with our 21 divisions, we had roughly about 35,000 people working for us altogether. Now, a large percentage of the people that work for us were offshore also. And for me, this was all about reducing costs for our overhead. Now, this particular program is focused on conflict resolution in the workplace. I can tell you, with having that many people working for you, there was always, for my part, a lot of conflict within the workplace. So for me, this is my approach to handling the majority of our conflicts within the workplace. Okay. So I think we were all raised on the idea all conflicts were bad. But for me, over the years of trial and error, I found nothing could be further from the truth. You see, the normal reaction to resolving conflict is to squash it whenever it breaks out. However, I think we should instead invite conflict into our normal quid pro quo, our normal give and take dialogue with employees. Now, from my perspective, if you decide as a manager that all conflict is bad and you share that idea with your employees, then one thing will happen. Your employees will make sure no bad information ever gets to you, which means you're shutting off or you're shutting out reports of friction, which also means shutting off critical flow of information to you. So for me, I think if you don't have conflict, you don't have innovation. If you don't have conflict, you don't have innovation. I want you to think of that. Now, for my part, conflict itself isn't good or bad. It's just inevitable. You cannot stop all conflicts. The world was built on conflict. It's part of being human. That's absolutely critical. However, because conflict is so common in the workplace, it does have to be managed effectively. So remember that. Conflict in the workplace must be managed effectively. So for me, I have three principles I use to manage conflict. The first is I prevent employees' conflict from coloring the business operations. Two, I make sure that the conflict work to my advantage by resolving them to improve the long-term strategies of the company. Three, I set policies that minimize the nagging effect of conflict. And I'm talking about conflict that plagues company operations. So What I can share with you from my experience, after a conflict happens, most will take the warring parties in separately. And what I mean by that is they will take the warring parties in one at a time, and usually the party that tells the best story wins every time. For me, I take both warring parties in together and I sit them down together and I ask the simple question: do you understand the impact your poor behavior is having on our business and employees? I then probe the problem deeply with both employees. I work with them to get a resolution to the differences. I will say 90% of the time, I can get a solid resolution to the conflict. The other 10% of the time, I will either fire both employees or I will fire the one employee I find to be the disruption within the workplace. Now I tell you this: never meet with the warring parties separately to gather information about the conflict, for it runs a high risk of unfairly taking sides with whichever employee is more persuasive in their storytelling abilities. I think managers should strive to limit situations where they are merely sitting in judgment of employees who are in conflict. Now, for me, placing employees together to work towards a solution under a team model is always the best approach. The manager, from my perspective, should always be a coach and not a cop. Now, also important is you must follow up with these situations in a timely manner and don't go overboard on a tough guy approach with your tactics to reduce conflict. Now, I think most managers have this idea that the floggings will continue until morale improves. And I say this never works. Now, I can share with you from my years or many years of management experience, I have found in a positive, supportive climate, I tend to get a more productive team. In a oppressive environment, everything becomes a problem. Everything. Now, for me, I am the forever student first. So it's all about learning for me. So again, for me, I never pass up on a chance to learn from conflict. Also, try looking at conflict from your employee's point of view. I think this can be relevant. Say to yourself, here's a good person who is a little lost right now, right? Nobody really wants to be difficult, and it's being human for the most part. One of the things I do is I remind my managers not to underestimate the effects of outside forces as it relates to our employees. For instance, right, trying to raise 2 or 3 kids as a single parent working full time is hard enough. When 2 of your kids are sick, you can't help but bring that into the workplace from time to time. And again, this is normal. Now, when you're in the weeds, that's all there is. And that's when employees, especially those feeling the weight of those problems at home, may lose perspective and get caught up in conflict with others at the workplace. So, with that in mind, I will say a wise manager will always look at the layers beneath all conflicts and generate a solution. So, for me, it comes to this: my executive staff and my management staff are expected to adopt principles on conflict resolutions, right? I say fix the system and don't try to fix the people. I hope this was somewhat instrumental in helping you resolve some of the conflicts within your workplace. Have a good one.